Hey guys, this is Brad from Blue Nile Farm. Welcome to the channel. Right now we're out in my hay field, and it's been really one of the toughest years I've had in a while. And the reason for that is basically, I'm recovering and trying to get a barn built. Every bale that I make is round bales, and I have to wrap them because we have no storage. So it's really been a very cumbersome year for me to really get on top of my hay. Plus, we dealt with some really bad weather early on, so everybody's running way behind. So I have fields that I'm still doing first cutting on. It's already August 11th. So the fields that I'm actually cutting right now, they've already went to seed. A lot of the seed is already fallen in the fields. And I know I'm not going to get a second cut out of it. So instead of taking it as a complete negative, I'm going to turn it around and make it a positive. So with all that seed that actually falls into a field, normally, especially when you're later in your cut, that seed is just like paying for seed as an overseeding. And my fields are generally grass hay with Timothy and orchard grass. So I'm going to use this opportunity because we've had somewhat of a drought of the last 11 days with very little water. And we're supposed to get rain the next 24 hours. I'm taking my 20-foot chain harrow out, and I am going to incorporate that into the soil to get seed soil contact. So that will grow and hopefully keep me in business for next year. So, nobody can argue about having a thicker field. And this is one of the benefits of having a chain harrow that I think a lot of guys really don't use. And I know in my area, I'm probably one of the only ones that I know that actually uses a chain harrow because, I actually find some value in it. Other people, they probably maybe not care. But, if you're going to spend, $5, $6, $7 a pound, to overseed, and they recommend, overseeing a pre-existing field about 10 pounds an acre on a broadcast, I'm sure that there's so much seed that fell into this field that by incorporating it with a chain harrow, which is one of the best tools you can use, when you actually have pre-existing grass, that get it in to the ground and get some seed to soil contact, it's money in the bank. So don't take a negative, turn it into a positive. And that's kind of what I do, because every year if I can overseed, I'll do so. And, I'm trying to move up into actually a no-till type seeder. But until then, right now, and even if I did have a no-till seeder, the situation that I have existing here today, because I'm harvesting it late and I have all this seed that's already fallen on the ground, I'm going to take advantage of the chain harrow. Because, bottom line with the grass hay, if you break everything down to a square footage, you only need about 50 to 75 actual seeds to come in contact with that soil to actually have a stand. And, sometimes too many seeds is also a negative. So realistically, I'm not looking for, tons of contact in here, but, more growth I can get out of this field, the better. And one of my biggest negatives of my operation right now is fertilizing and liming. And I'm trying to find a lime spreader that I can do wet lime on. And I think that'll help me out a lot down the road. But until then, that's probably one of my biggest deficiencies in my operation. But I have turned a lot of fields around that were very poor into positive ones through using the chain harrow and doing an overseeding program. And that's kind of what I want to highlight today, is that if you are a small hay farmer, or even if you're in the pastures and you have your fields that are in good shape, but say it gone to seed, brush hog them and then take a chain harrow in and start incorporating that seed right away. And by doing so, you're going to actually probably get a better stand the following year. And, it's good practice if you are a hay farmer, that at the last cut of the year, if you own a chain harrow, to take the opportunity to take it through your field and incorporate whatever seed there is to try to make a thicker stand. Nobody can argue about having a thick stand of hay. We all argue of poor stands. One of our other things we argue about the most is rough fields. And, I'm not going to get a lot of penetration where I'm smoothing things out with this as much, but, small like mole holes and certain thick patches of grass that, add to the roughness of a field can be taken care of with this chain harrow. Also, I'm in a drought situation. It's been about 11 days since we really had water. So all the thatch that I pull up and all the little small weeds that possibly are getting ripped out that I can't see, running this through are actually taking, bringing back water to my grasses. So, the more I can kind of remove water sucking plants and thatch, it basically just draws it in and it's trying to get back that water back to my grasses. That's kind of what I need to do. And you can see this looks kind of dry here because, you know, I cut my hay at 4 inches, and I should have a lot more growth in here, and I'm not having any because it's just been so dry. So I'm anticipating that once we get some rain, that this thing's going to turn pretty lush, and that's why I'm kind of excited. This field here has caused me a lot of trouble for the last 2 years, and last year I wound up putting, I seeded it, and it really came in pretty well, but I couldn't harvest it because there was nothing there, so I just brush hogged it. And I did chain harrow it last year, and I did it this year. And this year is a lot better, and I've actually had probably like 50 bales out of this little field. But I'm hoping to actually have more next year, but it just needs a lot more TLC. And if I can thicken the stand up a little bit, that would be also a positive. But, you know, what's nice about the chain harrow too is I'm running through this field, and hopefully I can show you, you know, this grass here is really dry, and it's pulling it up and breaking it apart. And as I'm flying through this field, because it's relatively pretty level, it's really making a difference, I think. And I'm pretty happy with that. And I'm hoping that I can show you the results of this before winter sets in, because, you know, now it's in August, and I'm not going to touch this field after we're done. And there's several other fields that I'm doing as well. I think that it's going to make a potential where I can actually start to see the growth. Normally I'm really late, like September, in October, when I actually do this. And this year, because of the way the situation is, I'm doing it now. Now, one thing I want to point out too is that when you do the chain harrow, and when you're going back and forth, you go down to a row, you turn around, you go back, and then you go back again, and you serpentine back and forth just like you're doing fertilizer. And you're just making tight turns at the end of the row with this down. I never lift this. I keep it down at all times. And, you know, this says it's set as aggressive. So I don't run my chain harrow in anything but aggressive, because I don't see no benefit if it's not aggressive. Because, you know, when I'm pulling up thatch, or I want to break the soil to get seed to soil contact, I want to actually get that seed down into the ground. And so that's why I like it that way. And the other thing too is when you get into these bigger units, you can't just flip them around easy, you know, to change the chain. So it's really kind of silly. So I suggest if you do this, go aggressive, because that's the setting that you're probably going to want anyway for almost everything. You know, it's great for dirt. It's great for overseeding. It's great for manure breaking up. It's great for pasture management. I mean, I just can't think of any reason why it would not be aggressive in running this operation. Now, as far as tractors goes, this thing is a Wingfield Harrow. I started off as a 10-footer. I eventually added wings, so now it makes it from a 10 to a 20-footer, and it came with its own cylinders. So Wingfield Harrow, and I mentioned this on another video, basically is out of Illinois. They have a lot of different types of harrows, but they have their harrows set up as box harrows, meaning there's a frame to it. And while it's in a frame, you can add to this as a heavy duty model, because you can add wings, you can actually add wheels to it. They come in different wing sizes, some 4 foot, some 5 foot, some maybe even 6 foot. You know, so you have a lot of different variations that you can use. And you can actually improve your harrow and build one as you go. And that's kind of what I did to a certain point. But I realized that for myself, if I have the quick attach system set up and more importantly, a hydraulic top link, I'm in good shape. And that hydraulic top link I love because I can adjust the back end of it. So if I got to go on a road, I can quickly lift it up and keep everything from dangling off the ground. So it works really good. Hopefully I'm going to get to show you how this looks. And what's nice about when you do a chain harrowing job in a hayfield is you're giving it a striped appearance. You know, you go down, you go back, and in the end you can actually tell. Now, one field I had, I cut probably the earliest this year. It actually had growth about this tall, almost I could say a foot in some spots, and generally probably about 6 to 7 inches in other spots. I actually chain harrowed that twice, trying to get seed to soil contact in that field. But unfortunately, that field is starting to kind of go bad, and I really want to disc that one up really bad because it has a lot of dead furrows in it, and I can't stand dead furrows. So I'm looking forward to possibly, if it doesn't really improve next year, I think I'm going to just disc that up and reseed the whole field. But I want to see how it kind of comes out, because this year's been really weird, and because I got a late start, I have a lot of weed growth that I don't normally have, and you know, I really don't want to go out and spray if I don't have to, but it may come to that on some of these fields. And you know, with the chain harrow, it really does a nice job, because even if I run it through, even with the weeds, it does pull out some of the weeds, and it does make the field look a lot better once you do this. And I want to kind of show you how this works and how this looks like from the cab, because as we go through, you can see all the dead grass and hay that's I'm pulling out actually falling right back into the soil. And unfortunately, we can't see if the seed is incorporating, but I'm sure that it is, because we're running through this field. And because it's so thin in this field, I only did it once. You know, that field I did it twice. And if you do it twice on any field you do, stay in the same direction. So if you start going north, then you go north at the first time again. And then on this, all your passes, you'll see your stripes. So it's really easy to follow. It's harder to create rows than it is to follow rows. And I find that worked out really good for me in that field. But these are so thin, I think once is all I'm going to need to really cover my ground and really make this, you know, get the seed incorporated. You know, timing is everything. And I think a chain harrow, if you are a smaller farmer, or even maybe you're a pre-existing farmer and you're dealing with grass hay, you know, I think a chain harrow is something that's old technology, but it really is a cost-effective tool, because you can use it for a variety of different things. And I think that's kind of what makes it more viable, as long as you decide to incorporate it in your program. I know they use it a lot out in England. I've had good luck with it, and unfortunately, I probably don't use it enough. But I do use it on my pastures, and I do use it in my hay fields. And I think because I use it in my hay fields, I really like it, because it does something that other things cannot do. You know, nothing worse than have big piles of grass sitting in here, and by able to pull all that stuff up and kind of move it around in the field, I feel like it does a good job, and it does help out a lot, in my opinion. But again, my biggest problem is I need to do better job on fertilizing and lime, and that's something that I'm planning on building up to. You know, farming hay, I've only done it for like 10 years, and I keep getting bigger, and I've been learning as I go. And you know, yield is important to me, because if you're doing the same amount of work as the other guy and you're getting small yields, you're really not making as much money. So, but of course, it takes money to make money, and you have to invest in fertilizer and lime to make it work. And if you don't do that, it's not going to work to your favor. So that's really some of the best things that you can actually do to make it work. So that's my opinion on how I would deal with it. So let me get you some shots of us driving through the field with the chain harrow. You can see it working in action, and hopefully you can kind of see some of the benefit of it. Well, unfortunately, I'm going to have to hold it. So here we're out in another field I just cut last week, and I kind of wanted to show you really quickly. You know, this is what it looks like when you're in a transport position, and this is why it's nice to have the hydraulic top link. I can lift this a lot higher than I do in the back end, but I just want to show you how easy it is to get it off the ground. It makes it a lot easier for transport to get in the fields, and it's just a lot nicer. So I just want to show you that as we go. This field here is really a good producer for me, and unfortunately my biggest problem is I'm a one-man show and I can't get these fields, and this is the one I'm holding off to the latest, and you can see how brown it is. It's all headed out already. And if you look, this whole field is my next one I'm going to cut down, but my this mower just broke at the gearbox, and I'm waiting for a new gearbox to come in, and that's due to rough fields. But this is a really nice, one of my nicer hay fields, and it's all going to seed. But we're going to chain harrow all this seed, because when it falls down after it's mowed, there's a lot of seed in there that can make good hay and nice thick hay. And there's a lot of, once it's mowed, it'll look a lot greener. But you know, you can see how it's ready to, all that seed is ready to fall. So this field I'm going to show you right now, the condition of it. Its grass is probably 6 inches tall. There's clumps of hay, and it's just a small section. I kind of leased the rent. I share the other section. The guy hasn't picked up those bales, and I'm not going to care. But this side is pretty much my side, and I'm going to kind of keep my hands on all the bales. So we're going to work this side real fast, and kind of want to show you before and after. And what you'll see in here is clumps of hay on the ground. It's just thick, and a lot of everything's matted down deep. And what's nice is with this chain harrow, it goes in there and just like combs it, pulls everything up, makes it a little bit easier. So this is kind of like a before shot, and then we'll come back over to this spot and I'll show you an after shot. So even though this is a thick field, you can see how easy it is to pull up all that old dead grass and kind of comb through it, and it gives you that striped look. And that's what I really like about doing this. And you may not have really a value to it, but you know, as soon as you can pull this kind of stuff off the ground and get it to get exposed to the air and break down again, it'll make life a little bit easier for you, and your fields are going to look so much better. And that's where I find the value in the chain harrow, you know. And it is extra time, it cuts a little bit of fuel, but you know, it goes quick if your fields are smooth. You know, I've done a bunch of acres a day, and I was moving right along at a pretty fast clip. And you know, at the end of the day, I feel good that I do this, because I think the fields are healthier, they look better, and again, you're overseeding naturally with natural seeds. And you know, I'm done with this field for the year. I'm not going to really get another harvest, and you know, between now and October, it's going to grow, and that's the best part of this. You know, when this field over here gets cut, it's going to naturally reseed itself, and I'm sure it's going to be thick just like it has always been. But it used to be a field that I sprayed, and I put a lot of seed extra into this to really make it a thicker field, and it's come along a long way. But unfortunately this year I've been so far behind, you know, due to the weather and breakdowns and everything else that's happened. It's just been really rough. This has probably been the slowest year for me ever since I started doing hay. But you know, we're going to make this work, because you know, I wanted to overseed these fields, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it the natural way. And again, thanks to the chain harrow, it gives me the opportunity to do so. And it also saves my money, and I think that's smart farming. So if you're a small farmer and you you think about overseeding or reseeding your fields a lot, this is an opportunity for you to do it. You know, even if it's considered organic, it's not a bad way to go. And I think the chain harrow is a forgotten tool, and has multi-purposes. You just have to think out of the box a little bit. And you know, that's kind of how I roll. I try to be an out-of-the-box thinker. Well, it's been 24 hours after we just ran the chain harrow through these fields, and I'll tell you what, I'm really happy. We finally got rain as predicted, and it was very much needed. It's been like 11 days of drought, and really is going to make the big difference. That's why using that chain harrow and getting that seed down to the ground right before rain is probably one of your best things. You know, the kicker is that the seeds, once they fall on the ground, aren't always going to germinate right away. So, you know, you have a time frame of 2 to 3 weeks after you do your last cutting of a hay field, or you know that's going to be your last cut, to basically run a chain harrow through and clean up your fields for next year. Now, this field could use a spray, and that's fine and dandy, but I'm not really too worried about that this year. My biggest thing right now is to get this seed incorporated and then make a decision, you know, on my fields and what I'm doing next year. Like I said, I'm behind on lime and fertilizer. I'm going to attack the lime problem right away. That's my plan, looking for a spreader, but that's another story. And you know, as far as getting the seed down, if you don't have seed and you don't have good quality grass, it's not doing you any good. So get in there, get this done, and I tell you, chain harrow is well worth the investment, and I think it's very much a very underused tool. And if you're a big producer, you may not have any desire for that. But, you know, for most of us that are small and trying to kind of, you know, grow, I think the chain harrow is a great tool. It can help you out a lot in your fields. It's definitely the tool for overseeding and for removing thatch. So, you know, and it's a cheap investment. When you look at all the tools on the market, it is a cheap investment. Check out the Wingfield Harrow. You know, what's nice is you can start small and build from there, and stick with aggressive. I think that's really the setting for you, and that's just my opinion. So again, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully that's helpful to other people. And again, take advantage of that free seed. If you have the ability to reseed your own fields without incurring any costs other than chain harrowing it into the ground, I think it's kind of foolish not to do so. And it's just smart farming in my opinion. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later.